This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at the Sony Xperia ZL. Not the Xperia Z with the glass back, but otherwise internals identical. This one has a plastic back. I'm not going to complain because this one is not as delicate for starters, and this one will be available with US LTE. So for us folks in the US, big selling point right there. We're going to look at it now. So this is the Sony Xperia ZL. Again, it's available overseas outside the US. That means we're inside the US. And Sony will be selling this direct off their website for $759. So expensive proposition there. Not that any phone off contract high-end smartphone is ever cheap. They're usually $600 to $650 even if you pay your carrier for them to buy them outright without a contract. But anyway, ours came from techshop.us, also techshop.ca for you Canadians. And this sells for $556 US right now from them, so that's actually not a bad price. This one does not have LTE, though, on our bands, so you'll only be getting HSPA plus 4G, but you will be saving a lot of money. So if LTE isn't something that's not so important to you, techshop.us has an awesome price on this phone. For a 5-inch phone, first off, it's rather compact. Sony's making a big deal about how this is the smallest 5-inch phone on the market, and well, certainly it is. And you can see it doesn't look absolutely huge in my hands. I have fairly large hands, but still, it's a little bit smaller than the Xperia Z with the glass back, and we'll compare that in a minute. First up front, you can see we have software buttons here, no capacitive hardware buttons, so those will appear as needed. Down here is the front-facing camera. That's kind of an unusual location down in the lower corner. Well, you won't be getting any forehead shots, but you will be capturing yourself in an unattractive under-the-chin shot more often than not, probably. So you'll probably be holding your phone up and looking a little bit like one of those nearsighted people who can't quite see things unless they look underneath their glasses. But hey, that's where it is at any rate. If you're holding it in landscape mode, perhaps a little bit less weird, but you'll be up there in one corner featuring the right side of your face. 5-inch full 1080p screen here, 1920 by 1080 TFT screen, mobile Bravia 2 engine. Again, same as the Xperia Z. Everything inside of this, all the hardware features, except for the casing, are the same as the Xperia Z that we just reviewed recently, so I'm not going to go into excruciating detail about all the hardware, but we're going to cover the casing and the differences in terms of features here. On the side, one thing I really like actually over the Z is there's a dedicated camera button, also works to be your shutter button. Really interesting there, a standard for Windows phones, but something you don't see very often otherwise. And for a phone that has a 13 megapixel rear camera, it's a pretty camera-centric device here, so I really like actually having that button right there. So our power button, much like on the Xperia Z, also looks a little bit like the PS Vita, kind of nice looking. Shiny edge, you can see, picks up fingerprints. It already is just as I'm touching it. Here are the volume controls right here. Stick out just enough to be easy to operate, but I have not hit them accidentally. Up top, our headphone jack. On this side, micro USB port. This micro USB port supports MHL out for output to HDMI, TVs, projectors, monitors, that kind of thing, and it also supports USB host. Unlike the Xperia Z that had that squared off connector, and I used the Sony on-the-go host adapter for that I used with my old Xperia tablets. This one just uses a regular USB on-the-go host cable adapter. And on the back, we see glorious plastic here. We don't get the classic all-glass black. So for those of you who are buying your phone really caring about wanting it to look very good, which is understandable. I mean, a phone is a very personal piece of electronics. This one doesn't look as cool. However, it feels very nice in the hand. It's got a bit of a curve to it. A little bit thicker than the ZL, and a textured back, so it's easier to hold on to. And of course, you don't have to worry so much about damaging this as you would a glass back. So, I'm okay with it, actually, to tell you the truth. I'll take durability. The speaker is on the back right here. Now, no matter where you put the speaker, unless they're front-facing speakers, a real rarity, except for on the HTC One, somebody's not going to be happy. I actually like this position better. On the Xperia Z, it's on the side, and it's like where I always hold it, so I always muffle it. Back here, at least, I don't tend to touch it so much when I'm using it. There's a little door over here. Pop that open, and you see our micro SIM card slot and our micro SD card slot. So yes, you have removable storage here, up to SDXC cards you can use with the phone. The phone has 16 gigs of internal storage built in, so you can augment that and put your videos and your music and all that kind of stuff on an SD card. One thing to note is, though it looks like it might be removable, this plastic back is not removable. The battery is sealed inside. 2370 milliamps of power. They're pretty good for a higher-end smartphone. Cannot take it out yourself. Now, in terms of size, to show you the difference between the Xperia ZL here and the Xperia Z, Here we have the Xperia Z. Here they are side by side. The ZL, of course, is a little bit smaller. So, same phone, same internals, pretty much, just a change in casing. It's amazing that they managed to actually shrink it a little bit more. And switching around to the back view, of course, the Xperia Z has that really pretty glass back versus this guy here with just textured plastic. And here it is next to the lovely HTC One, which has a 4.7-inch screen, but as you can see, it's actually a little bit taller than the Xperia ZL. You can also see the difference in contrast on the display panels and brightness. Much as I like the display on the Sony, I have to say the HTC One does win, just as it beat out the Xperia Z in terms of display contrast and brightness, and viewing angles too. But yes, it's still a 5-inch phone, and you see it next to the iPhone 5 here with its 4-inch display. Obviously, it's going to be still significantly larger than the iPhone 5. The Xperia ZL weighs 5.33 ounces, and it is 0.39 inches thick, or thin, depending on how you want to look at it. That's about average thickness for today's very thin smartphones. It's powered by this same 1.5 gigahertz Qualcomm Snapdragon Crate S4 Pro dual-core CPU, so you're looking at very good performance, and not quite as fast as the HTC One and the upcoming Samsung Galaxy S4 that have the even newer Qualcomm Snapdragon 600 CPU clocked even a little bit higher, but still, gee, there's a lot of horsepower here. It's plenty enough to do just about anything you can think of doing with this phone. It has 2 gigs of RAM, and as I said, it has 16 gigs of internal storage, dual-band Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0, NFC, with NFC being on the back, as it is with most phones, right around there. GPS with GLONASS. So full-featured phone right here. Multiple home screens customized by Sony lightly with their timescape-ish UI right here. And you can see some of the things they do actually I like. Like you can switch easily between alphabetical, most used, recently installed to find your applications. And this is Android Jelly Bean 4.1.2 underneath, a fairly recent build of Jelly Bean. Not the very most recent, but good enough. The phone is very fast and responsive to use here, and just as with the Xperia Z, again, we have a lot of Sony applications installed on here. We have their Walkman music player, their video services, their streaming music services, services to actually get you to buy more Sony hardware. PlayStation Mobile was not pre-installed on this, unlike our Xperia Z. That may have to do with the region that this import phone was meant for, which is Australia, Vietnam, parts of Asia. I'm really not sure what's up with that. Certainly it should be capable. It has everything in it that the Xperia Z does have. We also have the full suite of Google applications on here. You've got your Google Maps, your email, your Gmail. The Chrome web browser, the older Android WebKit browser, is not here. And obviously, because this is an unlocked model, there's no carrier bloatware. And we also have Office Suite here as your Office viewer. In terms of display quality, as I said, this is a very lovely display with Mobile Bravia 2 engine. The challenge that Sony has had has been with, well, the viewing angles. As you go off axis, a little hard to see here because camera also picks up glare, but it quickly fades. Now, with a phone, you can manage to hold it pretty much directly in front of your face most of the time, so is that a huge problem? Maybe not so much. The blacks also tend not to be very rich. Contrast isn't as high when you look at something like the HTC One or the iPhone 5, which have two of the best displays on the market. But the Bravia engine, too, will fool you because what that does is it actually tweaks images and videos particularly. So you might be looking at the home screen and saying, well, I wish my blacks were blacker. And then you'll be watching a video and you say, well, that looks pretty good because the Bravia engine is tweaking black levels and contrast on the fly. So still, overall, this 1920 by 1080p display is a nice screen. And to check out that display quality, we're going to use a Sony demo video HD one that has a lot of color saturation. You'll also be able to hear the speaker, which is reasonably loud and sounds pretty much like your typical mobile phone. Our volume is up about 2/3 right now. So obviously some very nice colors there. Big 5-inch display. It really makes watching videos a pleasure too. And again, full 1080p screen, so full HD movies make sense on this, and via MHL, you can actually output to your TV if you want, or you can use DLNA as you see fit. Now again, this is not the LTE model of the Xperia ZL. That'll be coming out in the US soon. So we're using HSPA Plus on here. I have an AT&T SIM in here. It also works on T-Mobile. Again, this is unlocked GSM, and it has HSPA Plus 3G and what the carriers like to call 4G, even though it's not quite, on both T-Mobile and AT&T bands. And you can see our speeds here, which for HSPA Plus on AT&T are pretty much par for the course. Pretty good. Certainly web browsing speeds are going to be fine with this. Email download speeds, even app downloads are going to be fine, but not incredibly, wickedly fast like on LTE. And this does have the mobile hotspot feature, so you'll get pretty decent speeds there, but not rip-roaring speeds, obviously, that you would on LTE. Again, Sony will be selling an LTE model of this, but it will be quite expensive at $759. Call quality on the phone, just like with the Xperia Z, has been excellent. Nice, good volume, really clear and rich. Easy to use dialer right here. You have your recent call log, and you can switch between your favorites, your contacts, all that sort of thing. So as a voice phone, highly recommended. Works fine with our Bluetooth headsets and car kits that we tested as well. Good stuff there. In terms of benchmark speeds, you would expect this to do pretty much the same thing as the Xperia Z, and in fact, it does. We've got a quadrant result of 7466, very respectable among Android smartphones, on to a really good 20,473. GL benchmark 2.7 using the Egypt HD 2.5 test, 32 frames per second on and off screen. And SunSpider was 1284, and that's using the Chrome web browser, which tends to benchmark a little slower than the old Android WebKit web browser, but Chrome is all we got right here. We don't have the older Android web browser. So all respectable speeds, fast phone, and we've got Real Racing here, so we'll give that a go so you can see how it plays. So now we're in Real Racing 3, we're going to race our beginner's Nissan Silvia in the first race. And this is a good one because there's a lot of cars in the race with you, so you can see how the frame rates hold up. We've got our rear view mirror in action here. I'll practice some hostile driving soon. Accelerometer on this is a little bit twitchier compared to some other phones. Definitely a little bit twitchier. Who said racing isn't a contact sport? It's playing great, and even the frame rate's holding up with all those cars going around the bend. Plays very well. Very capable phone. This thing can handle anything you can throw at it right now. So that's Real Racing 3 on the Xperia ZL. So as I mentioned, you get all sorts of Sony software on here. Sony Select is sort of like their one-stop social networking thing. One thing I actually really like is their Walkman app for music. You control it right from the home screen. Very nice looking. And the speaker's pretty good for music, and you can flip through the albums and change songs just like that. And you can see up here on the menu we have a throw option. That's Sony Speak for basically sharing over DLNA. If you have pretty much Sony components, Sony Smart TV, you can throw the content at the TV or the AV and actually play your content through your home music system. Now one of the real stars of the show here is the 13 megapixel rear camera Exmor RS sensor, f2.4 lens, so pretty fast lens. Takes really nice shots. Sony doesn't tend to use a lot of post-processing sharpening, so some folks might say photos look a little bit soft, but you can always sharpen that up using your favorite image editor after the fact. And on screen you can see we have a big button here for taking a still photo. We can shoot video. Our shooting modes are up here. Intelligent Auto is the default. And I would recommend it because it really does a very good job. But you can see you have a bunch of options here. Burst, picture effects, sweep panorama. Has HDR. And switching between your cameras, you have flash control right there and even more settings. Right here. Smile detection, geotagging, self-timer. A lot of stuff to work with there. So we'll shoot a video right here and we'll take some shots at the same time. And they're appearing right over here. It's not making any noise, so we don't interrupt our video. Just taking a shot. You can tap to focus if you want to. Usually it picks the right thing. It's very good at detecting faces. Quick enough. Works well. Definitely a nice camera. And here are some of our photos of our exciting bath toy, for example. Good colors. Not hyper exaggerated. Some people might want a little more color saturation. I think they're fairly natural, to be honest. You can always, again, post-process more color in there if you want. We took lots of pictures of the bath toy while we were shooting a video, and here's our cat sitting in a very dark room. Handles dark lighting reasonably well. Not like the HTC one with its ultra-pixel camera, but honestly, pretty darn good job right there. Though the phone has a pretty capacious 2370 milliamp battery, just like the Xperia Z. Battery life has not been so great for us, and obviously this is HSPA plus only model right here, so it's not LTE sucking down the power. Anything that involves the screen being turned on, which means anytime you're looking at the phone and interacting with it, that really sucks the battery pretty quickly. Playing real racing, you can just see the battery meter going down as you're playing, but even doing normal things like checking email, web browsing, streaming some videos, not really good. For claimed video playback time, Sony says 5.5 hours, which really isn't very impressive, and it's actually accurate. That's about all we can get. With a mix of average use, about 7 hours of actual screen on time. So you can throw in some calls there. When you're making calls, the screen is off, and actually battery life's just fine when you're making calls. But overall, not a real strong performer in the battery life department. So that's the Sony Xperia ZL. It's available right now. If you're overseas, it's available right now in the U.S. through importers like TechShop.us, who send us this loaner for review. And soon it'll be available on Sony Mobile's own website, selling direct with LTE for $759. Honestly, it's a very nice phone, and for those of you who are out of contract or don't wish to be in contract and using a GSM provider, T-Mobile and AT&T being the biggest in the U.S., it's certainly a nice phone, and it does a reasonably good job of standing up to the HTC One and the Samsung Galaxy S4. Definitely like the camera on this, and it'll be interesting to see how this holds up against the Galaxy S4, which has 13 megapixel camera as well, particularly for a traditional kind of sensor versus the HTC One with its ultra pixel sensor. But I suspect that overall a lot of you are probably going to opt for the HTC One or the Galaxy S4 in the US just to get that US carrier support and that little care and feeding that you feel like you might be getting from them, not to mention subsidies. But for those of you who are overseas, certainly also a strong contender. So that's the Sony Xperia ZL, available overseas through a variety of carriers, and in the US we get them through importers like TechShop, as I mentioned, who supplied our review unit. Sony will also be selling this direct from their website for a pretty expensive $759. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full review of the Sony Xperia ZL, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.